Hello everyone. Welcome to the first webinar of the project called Virtual Professional Development Network. So my name is Özge Öztürk and I'm a PhD student at the Department of English Linguistics at University of Hamburg in Germany. So together with the project team, I organize webinars and I'm really happy to be the moderator of today's event. So before we continue, let me share today's program with you all, as I can see many participants from different parts of the world, which is amazing. According to our schedule today, we will start with the opening remark, and then we will have two speakers, and both of the presentation will be 30 minutes, and then in the end, there will be a Q&A session. So please feel free to ask if you have any questions. So I will be very happy to address your questions to our speakers on behalf of you. So let's start first, we have our speakers. It seems that on my panel, everybody seems to be ready. So I just want to say welcome again, and I will hand over to Roger Cohen, who is the director of the Regional English Language Office at the US Embassy in Turkey. So Roger, can you hear us?
Yes. Hello, how are you? How's everyone? Thank you so much. This is such a great opportunity to be here. We are absolutely delighted to be supporting this project. Dr. Solmaz and his team have done an outstanding job, and we're very much looking forward to hearing from Dr. Thomas and Dr. Yeşilbursa in just a minute. As Özge just mentioned, I'm Roger Cohen. I'm the Regional English Language Officer at the United States Embassy in Turkey. And we do all sorts of projects and programs all throughout Turkey. We bring American teachers to Turkey. We send teachers to the United States. We have direct teaching programs. We sponsor webinars and conferences just like this. And we do a lot of different things to build the relationship between the United States and Turkey. And it's our overall goal to work with our Turkish partners, just like the panel here, to help improve the overall English education system in Turkey. If any of you are interested in collaborating with us, hearing more about our projects, you see our website below. Also, our email is reloturkey@state.gov. That's reloturkey@state.gov. We would be absolutely delighted to communicate with you. And also in the next few days, we will send all of you our monthly newsletter, which lists all of our free digital courses and programs that you're eligible to apply to. And it's a great way to keep in touch with us and also see what is on the horizon. We do a lot of different programs throughout the year, and they are all free. So we would love you to participate. So again, thank you so much, Özge and Dr. Osman and his team. And this is exciting. It's the first webinar, so we're very much looking forward to this. We're very excited. And thank you so much for participating this evening.
Thank you, Roger, for being with us tonight. And it is so great to have your support for our project. So I want to continue with the next person, who is the project coordinator and the best colleague for me, and Dr. Osman Solmaz from Dicle University, Turkey. Yes.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's great to see everyone joining us today. And I'm very excited to share the very first event with you. And I welcome you with our team. And thank you, Özge Hocam, for moderating this event for us. And our team is consisted of not just me and Özge Hocam, but also Vedat Kızıl, an English language teacher from Diyarbakır, and Kardelen Aslan, EFL teacher candidate from Turkey as well. So we are excited to host one of the many of these virtual events. And we are lucky to have Dr. Yeşilbursa and Thomas. As you know, Kansas is no stranger to Wizarding World. If you are familiar with the story, Dorothy, Kansas, maybe she will talk more about that as well. And we have Dr. Yeşilbursa, who is really well known in the field of looking into Harry Potter research. We hope that you will be inspired by their work as much as we are. And please follow our website. Our team will be sharing the links with you. You can check for the next webinar, which is upcoming in the next month, 3rd week of October. And you can also follow us through social media platforms, through Instagram and Telegram channel as well, to keep you posted. And as Roger mentioned, we will be sending out Regional English Language Office newsletter, where you can find, where you can access to a lot of resources related to English language teaching and learning. And of course, we are very grateful to have institutional support from Dicle University and Uludağ University, as well as all our events are supported and backed up by Regional English Language Office through US Embassy, Ankara, Turkey. So we are grateful for that as well. I will keep it here for now. And just a reminder, if you like to have a certificate of attendance, please participate and fill in the survey, which will show up in the screen as soon as this session is over. And we will be sending reminders. Özge Hocam.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah. And just to let everyone know before we continue, there will be a Telegram group for the upcoming webinars. So you can find the details in the chat box. And if you, again, a kind reminder for everyone, if you want to ask a question, you should write it to the Q&A section on the Zoom platform, because on the chat I can see many comments, which is nice, but if you want to ask or raise a question, you can directly write on the Q&A part. So it's a real pleasure today to have you all tonight. And I just want to introduce our first speaker, Amalia Thomas. So we will start with her session, and let me introduce her before she starts. And it's a great pleasure to have you today with us, Amalia. So Dr. Amalia Thomas is an assistant professor of teaching of English to speakers of other languages in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at the University of Kansas, USA. So as a TESOL teacher educator, she uses the Harry Potter novels to illuminate theoretical concepts about teacher knowledge, teaching practices, and desired dispositional stances toward learners of English as an additional language. So it is our great pleasure to have you with us tonight. The stage is yours, Amalia Thomas.
Thank you. I'm just going to attempt to share my screen or share my presentation.
Yes. Seems perfect.
All right. You can see everything? Okay, great. And then I'm just going to minimize things on my end. All right. Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Amalia Thomas, and these are my tales from the Wizarding World. And I just want to make sure you guys can all hear me okay. Can hear me okay? Great. These tales are about my attempts to bring the Harry Potter universe into the teaching classroom. I am a critical applied linguist with a background in second language acquisition and teaching. I am a former Spanish teacher, and I've also taught English as a foreign language. But mostly, I love teaching. I love language, and I love stories. I teach at a university located in the middle of the United States in a small college town called Lawrence, Kansas. And you probably are familiar with Kansas and Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. But in addition to all of that, you will find the University of Kansas, which is also known as KU. The university is most famous for college basketball. And when I say it's famous for college basketball, it's very, very famous. And its rallying cry is Rock, Chalk, Jayhawk. And if you meet someone from Kansas who went to KU, they will usually scream this at you: Rock, Chalk, Jayhawk, Rock, Chalk, Jayhawk. I work here in a School of Education and Human Sciences. I use my knowledge of language and linguistics to teach TESOL methods for use with English as a second language. This means that my students are not language teachers. In fact, many of these students have only had 2 years of a world language. Many have not traveled outside of the US or even outside of their region. Instead, these teachers are teachers of history, geography, English literature, math, and science, and they teach these subjects at the elementary, middle, and high school levels here in the US. These students are learning to make the language and knowledge of their subject areas accessible to the millions of students in US classrooms for whom English is not their first or only language. So that's primarily who I teach. However, I also teach and supervise master's and doctoral students with an interest in English as a world or foreign language, as well as world language educators. Thus, as a critical applied linguist who is also a teacher educator, my teaching and research is shaped by knowledge and practices drawn from both the field of applied linguistics and the field of education. At times, these two fields are at odds. However, through my teaching and research, I attempt to bring these two fields into greater alignment. One way in which I bring together applied linguistics and teacher education is that I focus on the language of teaching. For me, teaching is not just about theory or methodology or even practice. It is about the language and language use of teaching. It's about teachers and their ways with words, how they do things with words, and how teaching and learning is grounded in verbal and nonverbal linguistic action. My students and colleagues are not linguists, and so sometimes they hear my claims about teaching as being fundamentally linguistic, and they argue, ridiculous. Nonetheless, my goal through my research and teaching is to show this fundamental linguistic and rhetorical nature of both teaching and learning, and even assessment. I do this through my research in an area known as Harry Potter studies. The field of Harry Potter studies capitalizes on one of the top-selling books and film series of our times. Not only are there books and films to draw from, but there are many areas in which Harry Potter has infiltrated our digital lives, our imaginations, and even our pastimes. As a result, a lot of people across age groups, countries, and languages are familiar with the Harry Potter universe. This means that there is a lot of shared generational knowledge about the books and movies and its characters, and this shared knowledge can be drawn upon in teaching. I first began referencing Harry Potter, particularly the books, in my teaching back in 2017. My campus newspaper wrote about this work in 2019, but I write about this work in the following paper. My use of Harry Potter began with an analogy that compared the Muggle-born wizards to students in US classrooms who were learning English as a second language. This analogy, this Harry Potter and the border crossing analogy, helped my students recognize a similarity between the language learning, mainly the wizarding spells that are used in the novels and in the movies, as well as the socio-cultural and socio-political experiences that Muggle-born wizards like Harry and Hermione and Dean Thomas were experiencing. Those same kinds of language and cultural experiences that the Muggle-born wizards were experiencing were what English language learners are experiencing in US classrooms every day. For fans of the Harry Potter series in my classroom, this Harry Potter analogy instantly resonated with them. They loved it. They understood what I was trying to teach them, and they also expressed better empathy for the needs of their future students. For those students who were not fans of Harry Potter, and they do exist, while they did not want to spend much time talking about Harry Potter, they did express a better appreciation for the knowledge that my class was designed to teach them. And ultimately, that's what's most important. Just as analogy is a good teacher, story can be an even better teacher. In this paper that I wrote in 2018 with 2 graduate students, my goal was to highlight the personal and practical stories of 3 Hogwarts teachers. And through these stories, challenge the ways in which we as readers evaluate and assess the characters. Our ultimate argument in this paper is that the same practice, that is to draw upon the personal and practical knowledge of teachers, that this practice should be used to evaluate and assess real life teachers. So using fiction to think about real life. Our argument is based on an important reality about the Harry Potter book series. Much of the series is told from the perspective of Harry and of his friends. For example, much of what we learn about Professor Snape in the books is from what people say about him. It's not until the end of the series in book 7 that we actually learn about his life from his own words and perspective. Therefore, to really understand the teachers of Hogwarts, one has to focus only on those stories told by the teachers themselves. So looking only at the words spoken by those teachers. And this is what we did in this paper. We looked at the stories, tales, and talk by Lupin, Hagrid, and Snape to examine what those stories that these individual characters told us about their personal and very practical knowledge of teaching. Ultimately, my writing is designed to give teachers, including myself, a voice about what we are experiencing in our lives as teachers. And I do that through a number of works, this particular one being probably my most favorite and most personal essay. The idea of writing about your first 4 years as a teacher, as an academic teacher, and how it is traumatic, and comparing that to the Dementors in a fictional text is probably the best thing you can think about doing as a new teacher. While it's fun for me and it was very personal, it allowed me to really write about my journey as a TESOL teacher educator in a way that could resonate with other teachers and with fans of the Harry Potter series. Ultimately, Harry Potter saved me, and it allowed me to connect with more of my students. It allowed me to create scholarship that I enjoyed writing and that some people enjoyed reading. But while this work brings me and others joy, there is one question that I am almost always asked by my colleagues and by journal editors. I get asked this question all the time. What do fictional texts have to do with real life teaching? And I find this question rather annoying. It actually makes me feel a little bit like doing this. This question fails to consider the ways in which we as educators and as members of society are always asking others to take fictional works and allow them to produce real effects on people. We ask students in classrooms all the time to read fictional text, and we ask them to do this because those texts tell us and them about the real ways in which our society is structured, the things that our society values, and so much more. In fact, fictional texts, according to Vygotsky, or text in general, are mediating tools for learning. Texts can connect the things of school to the lives of learners. Texts broaden our understanding of what the learning text of the classroom could and should be. To even think about the importance of text, to realize it, all you have to do is think to Hermione Granger and just imagine if Hermione had read Beetle the Bard in one of her Hogwarts classrooms, or if she had come across the book in the library, then the entire structure of book 7 of Harry Potter would have looked very, very different. She and Harry would have already had a good source of knowledge to draw from in order to beat Voldemort and to figure out what they needed to do next. Fictional text can be used to spur what in the US we are calling 21st century skills. These are skills of creativity, innovation, and collaboration that we want students to take from the classroom. Fictional texts spark creativity. They do this through allowing students to create fan art, fan fiction, where they can write stories based on the Harry Potter series, headcanon, and all other sorts of texts that can encourage the writing and oral narration of story, be it through English or any language that a student is being challenged to learn. So ultimately for me, the question isn't really fiction versus reality. That's not the point. Rather, what is the point is the way in which we are called to reflect, to act, to change, and to perform as educators and how this surfaces through text. Harry Potter as a fictional text has shaped my real approaches to research and my real approaches to teaching as well. Over the past 2 years, Harry Potter has allowed me to focus on my love of language and language use. But mostly it has allowed me to do this through the character of Dumbledore. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the work that I'm doing around Dumbledore and how I'm using this to reflect on language teaching and teaching in general. So as an educator, of course, Albus Dumbledore is my favorite character. He's an experienced teacher. He's a super bad wizard, but he's not perfect. And I love that about Dumbledore. While the novels are about Harry Potter, and across the series, we get to observe what is happening with Harry, we also get insight into this process that Dumbledore goes through of acquiring knowledge in order to figure out how to defeat Voldemort and save Harry. So the books, while they're about Harry and they're named after Harry, they're not only about him, they are also about Dumbledore. And I find that so exciting. I find that it's exciting that it's about Dumbledore and his process or processes of coming to know. And once you start teaching and you go out into the field, you will realize a lot of what teaching is about is coming to know. This is the heart of teaching, this process of coming to know and thinking about what teachers know and how they share what they know and what the moral implication of knowledge is. And we can really see that through Dumbledore. So Dumbledore is a great character to study, but he's also a very cool wizard who has style. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about Dumbledore and his style. For the research that I've done around Dumbledore, a lot of this research is conducted using corpus-assisted methods. With some graduate students, I've gone through all 7 books of the Harry Potter series. We've taken out all of the text related to Dumbledore, and this is Dumbledore's speech only those words that Dumbledore uses or those instances where Dumbledore talks about himself, his knowledge, when he tells stories, all of that we've collected in a corpus that we've labeled Dumbledore speech only. And we've compared that to several other reference corpora. So we look at all of the language of Snape, all of the language of McGonagall and other characters. And we take these different corpora and we use them to specifically look at the speech of Dumbledore and what that tells us about his unique use of language and also his processes of coming to know. One of the works that I've been delving into lately is looking into this narrative inquiry of Dumbledore. And this is narrative inquiry is a method that's used in educational research. And it's focused on stories and the stories that teachers tell. So in the text, my colleagues and I are looking at the text where Dumbledore tells and retells stories, or he relives stories and tells or communicates anecdotes about his personal or professional self in action and knowledge. And we can divide up these stories that he tells into 3 really interesting categories: secret stories, sacred stories, and cover stories. And these stories line up with this research on narrative inquiry. I'm going to tell you a little bit about one of the cover stories that Dumbledore tells, because these cover stories, as we begin to unpack them and analyze them, we realize they tell us something very specific about how language is used. And it gives us, when we're looking at the English language text, it gives us some insight into the way in which we as characters, or as the characters, orient to one another and use language. And that gives us some potential insight into how English learners use language. So on screen, I have this example of one of Dumbledore's cover story. And a cover story is a story that's told by a teacher in the face of conflicting and competing stories, right? A cover story allows a speaker to provide different renderings of experience. And Dumbledore often provides these cover stories when he's trying to protect Harry. So this cover story allows him to tell one story while using that story to protect Harry and to tell a different kind of story. Often when Dumbledore tells cover stories, he attempts to make the person he's talking to complicit in the story. And if you've read any of the literature about whether or not Dumbledore is a good character, or if he's treating Harry unfair and he's hiding secrets, you will love this kind of work, this kind of study into Dumbledore, because he does find ways in his talk to make another complicit in his story. He does this, Dumbledore, by sharing or showing a form of agreement between himself and another person. It's really a savvy rhetorical move. So on screen, you see a text from one of the books. Dumbledore writes, Cornelius, I do not deny, and nor I am sure does Harry, that he was in the Hog's Head that day, nor that he was trying to recruit students to defense against the dark arts group. I am merely pointing out that Dolores is quite wrong to suggest that such a group was at the time illegal. If you remember, the ministry decree banning all student societies was not put into effect until 2 days after Harry's Hogwarts meeting. And so he goes on about how Harry is not breaking any rules. But within this cover story that Dumbledore tells to the Ministry of Magic, he brings in Harry as someone who can confirm. And then he turns to Cornelius and says, if you remember, also bringing him into and supporting this story. So when you look at the language of Dumbledore, it is really actually quite clever, and it mirrors many of the ways that we as speakers of languages tend to use language. And if you are looking at English language and English language teaching, you learn something about the way in which English is used in these texts. Further studying Dumbledore, you get to learn a little bit more about his style, and he does have a style. Dumbledore has this thing where he uses aphorisms to actually communicate knowledge to other people. These aphorisms actually function like sacred stories. And sacred stories are stories that are often told by administrators, and they are told outside of the classroom. So it's an administrator's way of sharing information, but done so in an out of classroom space. These aphorisms are treated as universal and taken for granted bodies of knowledge. They're you should kinds of knowledge, right? You should treat the truth in a certain way. And across the series, Dumbledore uses and draws upon aphorisms in his talk with Harry, other students, and even with some of his colleagues. There are at least over 15 of these aphorisms, which me and my colleagues call Dumbledorisms, that appear across the text. They are unique to Dumbledore as a character, and he uses them to talk to and share knowledge with students and with others. All right, the last thing I want to share about Dumbledore when you do these corpus studies of Dumbledore is this process of inquiry that he goes through over the course of the novels. One of the things you realize if you've read the novels from start to finish, that Dumbledore plays a very important role in helping Harry and others learn and understand how to defeat Voldemort. But he doesn't always know what to do. He doesn't know how to go about defeating Voldemort. People think Dumbledore is this fabulous wizard and he knows everything. But the beauty of Dumbledore is that over the course of the series, you see that he is coming to know and understand, that he is not born with infinite wisdom, but that he is gaining wisdom and knowledge. So if you look on screen, you will see the ways in which this knowledge builds over the books. He goes from, I think, I know, I think, I know, I think, I know. And then as we start heading towards book 5, when some of the key action in the series is leading us to the defeat of Voldemort, Dumbledore reaches this point where he talks about knowing and what he knew and how he has now started changing directions in terms of his course of action. So at some point in book 5, he sits down with Harry. He says, I knew you were old enough to have this information. I knew that I should have told you. And now we're going to go on an adventure together and we're going to piece information together. I think, and I know, and I believe are words that start to increase in importance and frequency for Dumbledore as the book goes on. All right, I've tried to tell you a lot of information in just a few slides about the ways in which you can use these Harry Potter novels to talk about English language, to talk about teaching, to talk about characters. But it's through Dumbledore that I think we really began to see the use of language and the way it can ultimately be used in the classroom to begin to ask questions about real and authentic ways in which English language is used. Through Dumbledore, we see that he is thinking, guessing, believing, and he's revealing knowledge across the series, right? And that this information is really important to understanding why he tends to withhold information. But this information is always also really critical to understanding how speakers of a language orient towards others in terms of how they reveal that knowledge. And in that respect, Dumbledore's language is so useful to English language teaching and learning. Okay, I'm probably out of time at this point, and so I'm going to close with a few implications that my presentation attempts to highlight. Why use Harry Potter? What are the implications of using Harry Potter for English language teaching, learning, and research? One implication or benefit is that the series allows an educator or a language teacher to tap into shared generational background knowledge. This shared knowledge allows a teacher to build a common and potentially persuasive ground for understanding, learning, and discussion. Using Harry Potter scholarship in the classroom allows a teacher to illuminate concepts and theories in teaching and learning, concepts such as personal practical knowledge or narrative inquiry as a method of investigation, and so on. Using the Harry Potter novels or the films, this Harry Potter universe, it can be used as a resource to inspire speaking and writing in the target language, whatever language is being taught in the classroom. The characters, scenes from the books, or movies can be used to encourage creation of written and spoken text. For the English language classroom, students can be encouraged to write their own fan fiction and to create fan art with short captions in English or in Japanese as shown in this image. The series is such a comprehensive fictional world that it readily lends itself to use for corpus-based research. Such research can reveal how language works in the novels and by different characters. Studying the language of these characters can then be tested against actual language use to see who and how closely the fictional text reflect actual real life human language and language use. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much for your nice presentation. Actually, your works are amazing and inspiring. Yeah, thank you very much. And actually, in the corpus linguistic area, I can say that it's one of the most authentic ones, right? These kind of works, yeah. So there are a lot of us, yeah, things to, yeah, discover more. But Dumbledoreism was like, yeah, fantastic.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
The Dumbledoreisms are so very interesting to examine and to find in the book. There's so much out there in those novels.
Thank you very much once again. I can see that in the Q&A section, there are some questions coming up. So I would love to move to the second speaker for tonight as we run out of time. So our second speaker today is Professor Dr. Amanda Yeşilbursa from Uludağ University. Yes, she is a great person, first of all. Yes, I know her. Yeah, as we are at the same institution. Yeah, so we were at the same institution. So she's originally from the UK, and she has been involved in English language teaching and teacher education for 30 years. So she has taught students of all ages and levels from kindergarten to postgraduate in Taiwan, the UK, and Turkey. And she gained her postgraduate degrees in ELT from Gazi University, Ankara, and currently holds the position of full professor at Uludağ University. So her research interests include reflective practice, English language teacher education, and teacher individual differences. So we are really looking forward to hearing your presentation. The stage is yours. Amanda Hocam.
Okay, thank you very much, Özge, first of all, for inviting me to take part in this webinar. It's been really fascinating. And as I said before, it's so exciting to see scholars doing research in the area of Harry Potter, because there's it's just so deep. There are so many things to get out and to think about. So let me start sharing my screen. Okay, right. So Dr. Thomas focused on the novels, the original written works. In my line of work, what I'm doing, I'm focusing on the films. Now, I'm not going to go into any discussions about whether the films are really representations of Harry Potter or anything like that, because they exist as a separate artifact. Okay, and it's the visual aspect, the film aspect, that I actually use in the teacher education here. So my area is reflection, it's teacher education, teacher development. So how I've been using Harry Potter is to reflect on classroom practice. Okay, so here we go, and let's have a look. So my Harry Potter story is still a work in progress, very much so. It started in about 2016, where certain things came into alignment, should I say. So it's the dark winter of 2016, January, I think it was, just after the new year. And this is when my twins had got, they were 11 years old, which is the age that you go to Hogwarts, so to speak. So I'd bought a copy of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in English and left it around in the house, and things happened as I expected. My daughter said, "Oh, Mum, can I read this?" And she started reading it, and in the space of about 2 weeks in the school holidays, we watched all of the Harry Potter films as well as they were reading the books. And it's while I was watching the films with them, and I noticed how Snape entered the classroom in the first, and I thought, I want to do that. That's amazing. Look at that. So I was watching these films as a teacher educator. Also around this time, January 2016, was when we lost Alan Rickman. And when I was at school, I noticed how upset my students were. Teacher, Snape has died. Oh, okay. And I thought, gosh, this is really a really important part of their life. Okay, my student teachers. And again, at this exact same time, I was preparing the content for a 2-hour lesson a week called Classroom Interaction Skills. Okay, so everything kind of came into play. So it started off in 2016 with me just showing Snape and his entrance into the first potions class. And over time, it developed. And I've added more teachers, I've added more activities, and I've presented these in terms of oral presentations over the years, especially 2017 to 2019. presenting these in oral presentations, getting feedback from other teachers, getting feedback from my students that I was working with. And in 2018, the summer there, this is where I taught this lesson. I taught my 5 teachers, and I got feedback from my student teachers as well. And according to their feedback, they got positive things, okay, but also the not so positive things were really important. For example, I learned from then that, for one thing, not everybody has read Harry Potter, not everybody has watched the film. So I realized I had to make it very clear that the activities that I'm doing in the classroom, you don't have to have read or Harry Potter or watched the films. Just as you go to teaching practice and you observe a teacher for the first time and you don't know anything about them, that's it. I'm not going to make any connections, because I realized if I did make connections with the wider world there, I was going to be cutting off a lot of people. Okay, so what happened as a result, though, that's some students who had never read the books or had never watched the movies developed an interest and started to after that. So that's how the actual content, which I'm going to be talking about today, though it's kind of developed over this time here. In 2020, of course, we had our pandemic and things changed a lot. But this gave me another opportunity to transfer this material into an online environment. Okay, so the material that I had that was handouts or videos that we watched together in the classroom were now online, okay, electronic versions, and that made it a lot easier. I'm currently doing a work which I'm not going to say anything about, so the study that shall not be mentioned just yet. Okay, I am still up to some mischief with Harry Potter, and hopefully within time that will become available. But basically we did a little a practicum, an online practicum with Hogwarts, but that's all I'm going to say about that for now. Okay, right, the Hogwarts context then. Actually, Amalia, Dr. Thomas, she talked about that, okay, so I don't really need to add anything too much about that. But again, I just want to emphasize that, because a lot of my students said, teacher, why Hogwarts? Why are we using this fantasy thing? Why can't we use this film or that film? I said, well, Hogwarts provides this representation of school life that is so thorough, and it's got everything in there. Okay, and we've got it not just, it's not a snapshot, it's a very longitudinal context as well. We can observe the teachers and the students over a period of 7 years, which is equivalent to the 7 years of how can I say, secondary education in the UK. But we can see the students develop. We can see, and to my knowledge, there is no other set of books with the films with them where you can see this. It's very, very thorough. Okay, so that's why the Hogwarts context. Why the films then? Okay, so why am I not using the books? Why the films? Well, this is part of my identity in a way. Rather than an actual linguist, I see myself as a teacher educator. Okay, so my teacher educator identity is a little bit more dominant than my, how can I say, the language aspect as such. So the films, for one thing, we get the sights and sounds. Okay, so that we can't get in the book. That you know, the reading the book is where you imagine those, and that's a whole different thing, isn't it? The imagination, where you imagine the sights, you imagine the sounds. However, teaching is a very, the actual practice of teaching is a very visual thing, isn't it? It's something that you see and that you hear. And learning to be a teacher, on that journey to becoming a teacher, and after being a teacher, we observe a lot of teaching. Okay, so we actually watch teaching, we listen to teaching. So the films then present this very visible and audible aspects of language. We can see the body language. Okay, we can actually see it and we can see the effect as well. The facial expressions, the gestures that the teachers are using. Okay, so we've got Snape, who's very closed. Okay, on the other hand, we've got Sybil Trelawney, who's which is all over the place. Okay, the clothes, again, are amazing. Clothes, obviously, it's a film. These are exaggerated characters, but the way they dress also gives us something to reflect on, actually, because we all have this idea of what a teacher should look like, haven't we? Okay, what kind of messages clothing gives as well. So that's another thing that we can see with the films, and also because there's the audible aspects as well, we can hear the prosodic features of the language. So you can hear Snape, okay, Alan Rickman, his voice. Okay, it's maybe definitely one thing to read it, but to hear that voice, Mr. Potter, isn't it? The intonation, the stress, the rhythm, the tone of the voice, how it goes up and down or how it doesn't go up and down. Those are all things that we can reflect on. So that's why I tend to focus on the films. Now, again, as I mentioned in the previous slide, observation. Okay, it's visual, it's audio, so obviously observation here. And any key component, you know, teacher education and teacher development, observation is right at the center there, isn't it? We have observation, peer observation, when we do maybe micro teaching in our methodology classes. We have observation, which is the very central point of teaching practice as well. So observation is not something that we just do. Teachers, our student teachers, also need to learn how to observe. Okay, so we're not just, when they're going into a classroom, they're not just watching a teacher and just see what happens. They know what to look for, and they know maybe how to interpret certain things that they see or that they hear, or at least provide different alternative perspectives on that. So watching these films, these very short clips from these films, it presents this opportunity for students to develop their skills of reflection on practice. Okay, and this ties in with Dr. Thomas's shared generational background knowledge. Also, it can be called a cumulative cultural text. By observing these teachers, by watching what they're doing, by slowing down the observation process, by reflecting on what they do and what they say, we have this, it builds up the episodic memory in the students there. They have this extra kind of database that they can think back on. When they're teaching, they can draw back on this knowledge again. And this is important. Again, when my students ask me, like, why Harry Potter, why it's fiction, it's fantasy, it's not real world, which is, again, what Dr. Thomas said here. But when we come into teacher education, okay, in Turkey, teacher education is an undergraduate qualification, you know, is taken at undergraduate level. Yes, certainly during the 4 years of theoretical and practice that we do there, that certainly students are going to get an idea of teaching, but that it doesn't begin there. Students have had at least 12 years of exposure to teaching and learning, both in the school and through books that they've read and films that they have watched. So this is a way of bringing that up, making it how can I say, more tangible in a way. So there's the observation aspect there. And there's also another thing that, this is something I got after watching these films again and again, is that what we get, and this is, I think, a very specific thing to a film, okay? The format of the first lesson scenes for a lot of the teachers, they follow a very similar framework. Okay, so what we do when we, and the thing is, I'm using the first lesson here, because there's a lot of information we can get from the first lesson. So when we look at these clips, then the video things say, what we notice is that we have a very similar setup then. First of all, the students are in the classroom. The students are already in the classroom, and the teacher may be there, they may not be there. Okay, so if the teacher is not there, which is the case with Snape and Lockhart and Umbridge, the teacher enters into the classroom in a certain way, in a way that represents their character in a way. Okay, and you can see that entrance, and you can see the students and how they react to the teacher's entrance. Okay, so that visual aspect. So you can see the interaction between student and teacher, the reaction. And as the teacher comes in, the teacher, he or she describes the course content. In this course we will, or in this course I will. And you can get a lot of ideas about this teacher's personal professional knowledge from the way they describe the course content. Okay, so for example, Snape will say, he calls potions the subtle art and exact science. Okay, in for example, Sybil Trelawney comes in and said, together we will discover, we will cast ourselves into the future, you will discover the noble art that is divination. Okay, so by using, by looking at the language there, you can dig into how, what that teacher believes about their particular course content. Okay, and the teacher also describes expectations regarding the course. So Snape says that he doesn't expect anybody to understand this subtle art and exact science, only those of you with a predisposition. So we know at the beginning that Snape has this particular belief there. So what we see here, this format, each of the 5 teachers that we observe, it follows this format. And if there's any variation to this format, we can discuss that as well. Okay, so this is another important aspect of the film. Excuse me, I have a little glass of water. Another thing that we see, which is really valuable about the Harry Potter film series, is that, and this is, you know, you can't get this with everything. It's just such a precious thing. The films were made pretty much over real time. Okay, so we've got 7 books, and each book represents a year at Hogwarts, doesn't it? So we've got going from year 1 all the way to year 7. Year 6 and 7 tend to go out of the school. Okay, but certainly years 1 to 5, we have a very school-based context. And because it's done over real time and the actors are the same as well, you know, none of the actors changed, only Dumbledore, because Richard Harris passed away. But the children, they're the same. So you can observe them. Now, obviously, observing the students over a period of 7 films is a different thing. I can't possibly do that in the period of you know, a course. However, the videos that we've chosen, you can see the children, how they change. So if we see, for example, Harry Potter in year 1 with Snape, when he's like, I don't know, sir, and he's like, oh, okay. But in year 5, when he's faced with Umbridge, you can see he can fight. He knows, he's got knowledge, he's got experience, and he knows, and he doesn't mind throwing this in the face of Umbridge. So we can see how Harry changes. Hermione as well. Hermione in year 1, which she's got her hand up, she's got always a hand up. And she always has a hand up. However, in year 1, she had a hand up because she wanted to say, I know this, I know this, I know this. But in year 5, when we see her with Umbridge, and the first lesson with Umbridge, she says, there's nothing about using magic in here. So she's interacting with the curriculum there. She's knowledgeable, she's got knowledge, she's got experience, and she starts to how can I say, look critically at the curriculum. Okay, she's able to say that, so we can see there. Now, obviously, Ron is more center stage than Neville Longbottom, but Ron, he's kind of Ron anyway. So he's always like, oh, okay, it kind of gets bigger. Why I've chosen Neville Longbottom in the certainly in the context of learning and teaching is that he makes this. We can see this amazing change in him as a student. Okay, obviously in the final film we see this, you know, as a wizard, as an amazingly brave wizard. However, in the in terms of learning and teaching, what we've got here, Neville Longbottom, in every class something happens to him, doesn't it? He gets he listens to the mandrake and passes out. He gets hung up from the chandeliers in Gilda Roy Lockhart's class. But we can see with Neville Longbottom, with a competent teacher, with a very caring teacher, we can see that he can succeed. So we've got this bewildered Neville Longbottom in the hands of a competent teacher, succeeding, doing something right, and thinking, yeah, okay, I can do this, I'm confident. And I think that's, again, something possible to reflect on with the films. Okay, then the professors then. Now, obviously there's there are lots of there's a lot of teachers, there's a lot of teaching, but you know, I'm limited to a certain amount of time to do this, also a certain amount of patience. You know, you don't want to overdo things. So I've got my my big five. Okay, I've chosen 5 teachers for the reasons that I will talk about now. Let me see, 1 second, there we are. Right, we start off with Snape. Okay, because he's there in the first potions class for the first year there. When we look at Snape, and we're only looking at about 2.5 minutes of a video, but it's amazing how much discussion can come from this 2.5 minutes. When we look at Snape, we focus on these things about him. His teacher authority. Okay, is he authoritative or is he authoritarian? Okay, what's the difference between being authoritative? What's the difference between authoritarian? How does he do this? Okay, he has a very teacher-centered approach. Okay, I can teach you. Okay, he believes in student aptitude. He doesn't believe anybody can learn. Okay, intelligence, but ability is fixed. You either have it or you don't. Okay, we focus, because this is a classroom interaction course as well, we focus on his questioning strategies. Why do teachers ask questions? What are the different reasons that we ask questions for? We have a look at Snape, for example. He asks questions to Harry because he wants to say, you know, obviously he has ulterior motives, if you're familiar with the series. But he's asking questions deliberately that he will not be able to answer. Okay, and so he's asking him to humiliate him in a way. And also we look at Snape for his voice quality and his body language as well. Okay, Snape doesn't shout, but he has absolute power over his students. Okay, so just even by speaking quietly, by stress and intonation, how you can assert your authority there. So this is what the kind of things we look at with Snape. Then the following week, okay, actually this is year 1, this is year 3, but I don't go in terms of the years, I go in terms of how we can contrast the teachers. So Sybil Trelawney is kind of like the opposite of Snape in her teaching style. So when we watch Sybil Trelawney and her divination lesson, again, we talk about teacher authority, or maybe lack of authority. Okay, because she's clumsy, she doesn't really listen to her students, and everybody's like, what? Okay, even Hermione, and we know Hermione, you know, what a seriously hard-working student she is. She questions Sybil Trelawney, she doesn't take her seriously. Okay, on the positive side, we can see that she's into discovery learning. She has everybody sitting around tables with their teacups, okay, ready to read. So we've got hands-on activities as well. With Sybil Trelawney, professional identity is a very good thing that we can focus on. I mean, is Sybil, is she a teacher or is she a fortune teller? Which identity is more dominant? Okay, and you can see with the way she dresses, and she's obsessed with making predictions. Often they don't, they don't work or they don't come true, but she's more of a fortune teller than a teacher, and the way she dresses and the way she behaves kind of reflects this. She also asks questions in the class. However, this time she asks a question, she directs it to the student, but she doesn't listen to the answer. She doesn't wait for the answer. She just leaves the student in confusion there. Okay, and her voice quality as well. Okay, it's up and down. Together we will cast ourselves into the future. So she's up and down with these wild gestures, complete opposite of Severus Snape. And we talk about that, how it can be distracting as well, maybe. Okay, then we go back to the second year with Gilda Roy Lockhart, and now he's like one of my favorites in a way because he's just so bad. Okay, so with him we learn about teacher authority and how he looks. The beginning of his lesson is fine. He comes in, he's got command. But the end is a complete disaster. Why is it a complete disaster? What is he lacking? Okay, on the positive side with Gilda Roy Lockhart, he brings in hands-on activities, but unfortunately, he doesn't know how to even carry out that activity. Can we talk about that? You don't just bring in an activity, bring in a newspaper and expect everybody to be able to read it. You bring in an activity, but you have to scaffold it with your students. So in this week, we talk about giving clear instructions, and we look at Gilda Roy Lockhart and see how the reason why he fails is that he doesn't know how to give instructions. His instructions are not clear. Okay, we talk about dealing with unexpected incidences. Okay, and how he deals with that is just by running away, isn't it, and leaving the students with it. And also about student safety. Do you leave a classroom? What do you do? Okay, as your responsibility as a teacher there. So he's really quite fun to watch. And a Dumbledore aphorism here, when McGonagall asks, why on earth did you bring Gilda Roy Lockhart? For heaven's sake, isn't there anybody else to teach this? And he does say that there is always something to learn, even from a bad teacher, what not to do and how not to be. Okay, so Gilda Roy Lockhart is that teacher who we learn, what not to do. Actually, my fourth teacher is Remus Lupin, and this is where we sort of like come, he's like everybody's favorite teacher, classroom teacher. And this is where the, how can I say, his scene, the boggart lesson, okay? The beginning of that scene is textbook perfect. It is EFL methodology, textbook perfect. It's exactly out of Jim Scrivener, Learning Teaching, okay? Because what we see him, he's got teacher authority. Now, he doesn't exert his authority through flashy clothing or through intimidating clothing like Snape. He looks like your basic teacher, doesn't he? Okay, teachers don't have huge salaries. Okay, we can't afford these flashy clothes. We just have this, your basic teacher. But he has authority in the classroom. Okay, and how does he assert his authority? He does this because he knows what he's doing and he knows how to teach what he's doing. He's prepared. Okay, his students, he knows his students. Okay, he knows Neville is a weak student, so he's going to need maximum scaffolding. He knows that Hermione is likely to take over with everything, so he knows when to cut her off and say thank you. He also knows that Harry is vulnerable, and he knows that he might have to step in there. So we see that we see that he uses questioning in a real teaching way. Okay, proper elicitation. Okay, who would like to guess what's inside? Okay, and what does a boggart look like? Okay, he's thought about his questions very carefully, and his questions are chosen and sequenced in order to get knowledge out of the students. His instructions, as I say, are just perfect. Okay, how to give instructions. It's just a wonderful example with his scaffolding, dealing with unexpected events. Now, something similar happens with Lockhart, doesn't it? So he sets up an activity, something goes wrong. Lockhart escapes. Lupin, when there's a potential danger for Harry, he steps in, he goes in front, he shows that he actually puts himself on the line there, because the boggart turns into a full moon, which is his greatest fear. So anybody who's there, who's thinking, who's being observant, will think, okay, they will know about the werewolf thing. So he kind of sacrifices himself there for Harry Potter. And we see also that he doesn't just know how to teach this, he knows how to actually do the experiment, the spell, okay, which is Lockhart didn't do that. Now, there is something that we dealt with in a discussion here about Remus Lupin. Yes, I mean, he is a very good teacher, but was he right in finishing off the lesson early? Okay, so how he dealt with unexpected events is to say, okay, let's stop there, everybody go. Okay, was that the right thing to do? Maybe. I mean, that's certainly something to discuss there. Okay, so he's cutting off a chance to learn for all the other students. Okay, something definitely discussion worthy there. And we finish off with Dolores Umbridge, who we absolutely love to hate. Okay, and she's in year 5, and year 5 is the exam year. The owls, ordinary wizarding level, okay, exams. And she represents the politicization of education. She represents the rules and regulations. And we've seen so far in 4 years at Hogwarts that it's a very practical school. It doesn't really go in very much for theory. We don't have a very strong theoretical background. Students learn exactly through experience. Okay, and she's here. Okay, look, we've got these exams that you have to pass, these ministry exams. You know, you can't be disorganized like this. So when we see her first lesson, we see that the students are playing with magic. They've made an origami bird and it's flying around and they're enjoying magic. They're doing things. And she comes in and she burns it. That's it. Okay, so she's stating her authority there. Her approach to her students is very defensive, very, what's the word? Patronizing. Okay, they're in their 5th year and she gives them out basics for beginners. Okay, and her focus is school and exams. School is, you know, exams. That's what school is all about. You need enough theory to practice, you know, just to pass the exam. You don't need any more than that. Okay, so with her, we can discuss school and exams. We can discuss theory and practice as well. And we can talk about discipline. Okay, so this is really, at this stage, the students are now 16 years old. They are at the height of adolescence and all the crises that adolescence brings with it. They're challenging authority, and the authority here is a very nasty woman. Okay, she's a very scary lady. Okay, then, how are we doing for time? So what I'd like to do now at this point is to share the material that I've developed over time to look at that. Okay, so what we do, so I've got 5 teachers and we observed a teacher each week. Okay, so for each teacher we have a video task, a task that they do when they watch the video. Then we have a task to do with the script. And then finally we have the observation sheet. So let me show you then the video task. Okay, can you see this? I need to know if you can see my task.
Unfortunately not. It's your screen, presentation screen.
Ha, okay, so what I will do then is do something fancy. Let's have a look. There we go. There we go. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So this is my Severus Snape video activity. As I said, these used to be on photocopies, which I used to hand out at the beginning of the class and collect at the end and say, don't write on them. These are my precious. Okay. But now, now things are online. I've got this as a Google Forms here. So what they have to do is they watch the clip of the first lesson with Snape, how he comes in. And the questions that they have to do is, right, from where and how does Professor Snape enter the classroom? Okay, because this is a very, very trademark thing, isn't it, with Snape? He just kicks the door down, stomps in and starts talking, okay, from the back of the classroom, okay, because, it's frightening the students, they can't see him. Then they focus on Snape's body language and facial gestures, which are, again, trademark. Okay, he's like a bat, isn't he, where he closes himself up. Okay, and his face, he doesn't even have any facial expressions at all, does he? He's just deadpan. Describe his voice quality, the way he uses volume and intonation. And then those are the basic descriptive things here. What we look at next is like, what effect does this entrance, his body language and his voice quality, what effect does it have on the students? And then what does this tell us about his authority as a teacher? Okay, because this is something we can observe. He comes in, the students, their faces. Okay, we can watch that. And then this is before looking at the discourse. We can say then, what can we infer about Snape's beliefs about learning and teaching from this short clip? Okay, and is there anything else that you'd like to remark on? And this is before even looking at the discourse. So that's what we do there when we're watching the video. And this is kind of what we teach, isn't it? When you're using video in an ELT class, an EFL class, focus on visual things first and then focus on the language. So I'm kind of mirroring that as well. Okay, go back. Right, so after they've watched the video and that we've talked about that, we get this script task, which again, you're not going to be able to see, but let me open it first this way. Okay, with the script activity, we haven't got it here, but I usually give them the script of this, and they have some questions here. This is a little bit more of the discourse analysis things here, okay, where we're looking at the language that they use. So we give them the lines. What can we infer about Snape's beliefs? Okay, about his subject matter? What can we infer about his beliefs about learning? Okay, 6 to 7, what can we infer about his beliefs regarding the teaching of his subject? Okay, so we've got content, learning and teaching. Okay, this is very clear in that script. Then we focus on his questions. Then we have some extra bonus questions here. For example, student favoritism, because that's very clear. I mean, that's a thing about Hogwarts, isn't it? The 4 houses, and they have house masters. And naturally, the house masters will favoritize their own students. And also examples of sarcasm as well. Pity, Mr. Potter. It seems fame isn't everything, isn't it? Okay, so we can have a look at this again, given the overall classroom. Would you like to be in his class? Why or why not? And this is again, we get lots of interesting comments here from my student teachers. Some will say, oh my goodness, no, I can't learn like that. I can't learn in that pressure. Some of the students say that, well, yeah, if that pressure would make me, I'll show you, kind of thing. Okay, so this, again, it gives a very good instruction, a very good introduction to teaching here. And then what can we learn from Snape as a teacher? So that's based on our discourse there. Do a bit more acrobatics. And finally, then after we've done all this, we've got this observation sheet, and this is where I tie it in with the teaching practice that we do in schools in the 4th year. Okay. So you're not going to be able to see that. Right. This teacher observation form is a form that I have developed myself based on the Ministry of National Education teaching practice form, basically. Okay, the teacher competencies. Okay, so all these here, these the items that they see here are going to be what they're going to be observed for during teaching practice. Okay, so this is where I'm making the connection now between Hogwarts and the fictional world of Hogwarts, and then look how real it is. Okay, this is what you're going to be doing. So in this form here, then they see, for example, field knowledge, and they've got their choices here: good, satisfactory, poor, not applicable. Okay, because maybe it's not observable in all of the teachers. So we can see here no specialized teaching methods and techniques. Okay, I can actually speak English. Identify students' incorrectly formed concepts, respond to students' questions, set up a safe learning environment. Okay, so Gilda Roy will get a very poor for that, for example. We can focus on classroom management as well, starting the lesson in an appropriate way, attracting attention, setting up a democratic learning environment, dealing with disruptions, appropriate use of praise and positive, all these wonderful things. Okay, bringing the lesson to a smooth end. Okay, so this is, again, they observe and they can make some extra comments here. Communication, because we see that, you know, communicate effectively with students, clear explanations. That's all there. Use effective use of voice, thought-provoking questions. Okay, and then the teaching process as well. Okay, so all those things there, when we look at that, we can see how very, very, very clear it fits in with Hogwarts, our Hogwarts teachers. So let me come back. This is what I wanted to share with you today is, as I say, so it's a work in progress. I started off with one observation of Snape, thinking, wow, doesn't he go into the classroom wonderfully? And I've finished off now with these, you know, pre, while, post activities, observation activities based on these 5 different teachers. Students often say, teacher, can we look at this teacher? They say, well, you do that. Okay, this can be a next step. Okay, you find your Hogwarts teacher and you develop your questions for that, your observation questions. I mean, that's something that can definitely be done. As I say, I've used this material in an online teaching practice environment, and hopefully the results we will be able to share with you in the future. But as Hagrid says, oh, we shouldn't have said that. Okay, that's a secret as yet, something not to be mentioned. Okay then, so where am I? Those are my references, just to show that, you know, I'm not making these things up. And thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you for listening. And it's been wonderful to share with you these ideas. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, for your great talk and inspiring ideas, Dr. Yeşilbursa. Yes, and there are a lot of nice comments going on and brainstorming between the teachers in the chat box. Yeah, there are a lot of teachers sharing the ideas for grammar teaching and writing, and then a lot of nice things. So I just want to point out, a few questions before we finish. And first of all, I want to start with the questions related to material sharing. So participants, want to get the PowerPoint presentations from both speakers if it is available. Yeah, so that we can upload them to our website, project website, if it is okay for you. And then the participants can follow from there, from our website. Okay, thank you very much. So I can see nodding head, so okay. And then, yeah, so, okay, the participants can share, like can follow our website. And the other question is that maybe for Amanda, it could be suitable for you. Like one question is that like we can use this format authentically in the state schools in Turkey. There's one question, yeah.
Right, yes, I mean, that's another thing. It's universal. What goes on in those classrooms in Hogwarts is very, very universal, very, very recognizable. And I think that's why it's so popular all over the world. Because one of the comments that I used to get when I started doing this is like, oh, teacher, this has got nothing, you know, we don't teach magic in Turkey. You know, we don't teach magic in English in England either. But it doesn't matter. Those school images. What goes on in the classroom, everybody knows a Snape. Okay, in Turkey, everybody has had Snape for a teacher. Everybody has an Umbridge for a teacher somewhere. They're all things that we recognize because we're all human. We're not really that different. Yeah. Okay, so yes, it's the format really is a very recognizable thing, something that we can, you know, we do reflect on a great deal in Turkey. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much. And then the second question is like, yeah, it's about the ones that like who don't like Harry Potter, who might not be interested in Harry Potter. So what can we do for those kind of, yeah, learners or students, or yeah, to have them included? Yes.
I'd like to address that question.
Actually, because I was gonna ask, about this, yes.
Yes, so not a lot of my undergraduate students are Harry Potter fans anymore. You can see that the Harry Potter fans in the US at least are growing up and they're moving away from the text. They have other kinds of text that they're reading. They care more about the Kardashians. You know, there's just so much more that's out in the public sphere that they are interested in. And for me, the thing about Harry Potter is that it provides this large, complete universe that you can talk about. However, I always suggest to my students, and I invite them to bring text into the classroom that they are learning from, that they see as reflective of teaching and learning. And so all kinds of text are possible. It does not have to be Harry Potter. And for students who are not interested in Harry Potter, they need an alternative. So it's important to have an alternative for them, especially since a lot of students are turning off from J.K. Rowling because of some of the tweets that she's made over the years. So.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, can I also say something about that as well? Because that's something that I had, you know, the first time that I did that, I was very aware of that. Obviously not everybody likes or has read Harry Potter, and even, you know, in Turkey there are certain cultural things as well that get a kind of a reaction. But however, I thought that this Harry Potter universe, this visual was so valuable that I could not use it. So what I do with my students, I emphasize very clearly at the beginning that you don't have to have read the books, you don't have to have seen the films. All you have to do is to watch the teacher and to observe what you can, you know, to reflect on what you can see, what you can hear, and also on the language. You don't have to know where Snape's background story. You don't have to know what's going to happen in the future. You don't have to know that because you get all sorts of strange, different things. But teacher, I don't know what I'm going to do in the exam. That's another thing, because I'm teaching this, and obviously I have to give an exam as well. Now, when I gave the exam for this course, it's I didn't directly use the Harry Potter characters, because I thought they might forget Snape, or they might forget those things. So anything that I gave them grades for that I didn't use Harry Potter there. What I did do though was have, for example, a scenario with a very authoritarian teacher, and they come doing this and do, okay, Snape really, but I didn't say it was Snape, it's this. You see what I mean? So it's the transferability, I think, is important here. What they need to be able to get, in my observations, what they observe there, it's transferable into real life. So after that, we leave Harry Potter behind, but in the exam, have you got, the basic principles of what we've been talking about? Okay, so that's how I've got over that, because you get all sorts of things. Like a teacher, I don't know Harry Potter, you get people bringing in Harry Potter's books and reading them in front of you, thinking they're going to try and impress me. I don't get impressed by things like that, You see what I mean? That's one way I've got around it, because, as I say, it's just too valuable not to use. I think it's just such a, we should be making, I wouldn't not to use it. Okay.
Yes. So, okay. Yes. Yeah.
Can I add one point that I saw in the chat? And it was a comment about the film being more effective in terms of reading gestures. And I wanted to put in a plug for how reading complements what we see in the film. I think it's important to read the books if you have the time, because when you go back and you read the books and you read Snape and the words that he uses, you realize that this very mean teacher is so incredibly passionate. And he's passionate about his subject of potions. He's passionate about Lily Evans. He has so much passion for a mean guy. And it doesn't always come through in the films, but it comes through in the books. So when you watch Snape's performance on screen and how he approaches teaching, I think that passion is diminished a little bit. But if you read the text, you realize there is passion there. And so even though he may seem like a mean teacher, he is passionate about his subjects, and the books reveal that in a way that I think is important, especially when we're talking about teachers. Some of the strictest teachers can be so passionate about their subjects, and teaching is complex. Teachers are complex. And I think between the books and the films, you get a sense of the complexity of teaching. And I think that's so important that teachers are prepared to engage with that complexity.
Yeah, true. Great points. Yeah. So moving to the third question, as we run out of time. So one question is related to whether Harry Potter as a theme is suitable for young learners or not. Yes. So do you suggest using Harry Potter as a theme for young learners?
Certainly, maybe the first book would be suitable, because you've got to remember the age as well. I mean, Harry Potter, they grow up literally. So, I mean, the 11-year-old, that maybe, and that's what I would say, that the first book, I think, would, because it's more lighthearted, it's more fun, it's more colourful. Things start to get dark a little bit, later on. I don't think, but certainly the first book, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've heard some parents talk about reading the Harry Potter books one a year to their children as their children grow up, to mirror the book. So that's one way to get around this idea that the books are too mature for young kids. Maybe they can read it and start with the first book in 4th grade and then the next book in the next grade. And so there is a way to deal with that.
Okay, thank you. And we got lots of requests to read your works, for both of the speakers. Maybe I think at that point it might be a nice idea to share your ResearchGate profiles, or the website or anything else on our website. like under your PPT presentations, I think, because they want to read your works and they're asking for personal contacts, emails, yeah, of both speakers. So we can share, I think, the profile of our speakers on our website. So the other question is that about the films, can films be used as in 4 skills integrated methodology in a communicative language classroom? So
definitely, definitely, yes. I mean, that's another thing, isn't it? I mean, you got the films there, you got the books. That I mean, skills are integrated anyway. Even if you read a book, you go and talk about it with your friend, or you go and watch the film, then you can compare the book. Skills are just so naturally integrated. It's, you know, it's impossible not to, I think, my personal take.
Agreed. Agreed.
And the final question is maybe too personal, but who is your favorite Hogwarts teacher and why? Yes, this is our final question. Yes.
Yes. So Dumbledore is my favorite Hogwarts teacher, as I talked about. I just, you know, I've been teaching now for over 20 years, and I understand what it's like to be an experienced teacher who is still learning, and that process of coming to understand and to know and to get better, and what you share with your students and what you don't share with them. And so I love looking at the complexity of Dumbledore and the issues that he faces, even though people think that he's not always an honest guy, but he is. He doesn't always know what to do. And that's a very real problem that teachers face. So I have so much sympathy and empathy for this character.
Okay, it's a bit complicated. I would say that I would like to be McGonagall as I get older. I think she's kind of like my role model there. In terms of methodology, I think, you know, Remus Lupin is, as I said, he's just methodologically perfect, or apart from the end part where he ends the lesson. I mean, in terms of being a teacher there, that will be really useful. I'd love to enter the classroom like Snape. I can't do that. I tried, it failed miserably. I mean, there's something from everybody there. Sometimes I feel like Sybil. But I think my kind of, my role model in a way is McGonagall. I quite like to be McGonagall. Yes, you know, the school mistress.
Okay, then thank you very much, yeah, for your time and contributions for tonight. Yeah, I think from the participants, I can see a lot of nice comments in the chat box. And for the participants, there is one more announcement, like we will have 8 more like webinars for the next 8 months, like once in a month. So yeah, you can follow us on our website, and there will be a survey for those who attended and who want to get a certificate for the participation. So you need to fill out the survey to get your participation. So thank you very much to everyone, and good evening.
Thank you.